I knew I'm dying in there. That's why I felt instantly, whoa, that was wrong. I didn't do well. I failed. And then the tunnel suddenly was blocked by a gigantic wall. And on this wall appeared fire writing telling me, you're not going to die now. And the spirit world told me two things. Everybody will return to source. All the datings are more or less wrong. Everything is older. The pyramids are not from the Egyptians. They are from the civilization before the flood. And there have been many cyclical catastrophes. So there was the flood, then there was ice, and there was fire destruction. So there were at least 3, 4, or even more civilizations we don't know anything about. And their technology, the pyramids, how they work, we still don't understand fully. And the picture gets bigger and bigger. If you look at the old petroglyphs with these strange depictions of, nowadays we'd say, looks like a gray. The ancients didn't have a word for that, but it were different beings. And always with this kind of vortex spiral, which the archaeologists name the spiral of life. No, it's a vortex. There's a place of power, a portal where contact was possible, and these other beings from other dimensions or other star systems came through and tried sometimes to help and further civilizations, and sometimes just to conquer and oppress and control and take the riches of the earth, like the gold mining Anunnaki and all these stories, you know. The picture is so much bigger.
That's so interesting and something I haven't ever heard of. Tell me about, maybe let's limit it to the pyramids. So you were saying that the Egyptians weren't the ones that created the pyramids and that we got the symbolism of what it is a bit wrong. So take me back to what that means and what do we not know or what isn't in the mainstream media about it.
Well, there's firstly the wrong dating, and that the Egyptians, kind of in their pride of nowadays, said, well, it was our Egyptian forefathers 6 or 8,000 years ago who built that. And they show in the history books for school kids, they show these kind of primitive Egyptians with just a linen cloth and ropes and dragging stones. It's just, I don't believe that. And since there are enough remote viewers that did projects on the pyramids and found different things and always found more or less, like the Farsight Institute, that there were E.T.s involved at least, because you can't move these 70-ton big stones with the technology we have today. Even today, we can't move it with all our techniques, our cranes and whatever. And now our science comes to the point that they find, okay, you can levitate things by sound. And maybe they had a different technology, and also the pyramid was used for a different purpose than we are told. There was never a single mummy found in a pyramid. There are these chambers, and when engineers look at the pyramids, they get it very fast because they have a different viewpoint to look at that, and they say it's some kind of energy machine. And that's what happened to me when I was at a public dam to give some examples of mediumship and give public messages to people who came to that event. I had a guy sitting there and he seemed very reserved with crossed arms. And I thought, well, he is not here because of his own. Maybe his wife sent him and he doesn't want to be here. But when I sensed into his aura to get a message, I saw the pyramids in Egypt and I knew exactly that's Egypt. And I had to look a little bit aside, and beside the pyramid were standing 2 E.T.s, looking kind of like grayish, you know, the kind of gray depiction. And they told me, tell him this and that. And I thought, whoa, I cannot tell that in public. The people will think I'm nuts. And I started cautiously with him and I said, I see the pyramids in Egypt. Are you maybe interested in traveling there or in the history? And this guy, without moving anything, just only said, I'm an engineer and I'm interested in ancient technology. Wow. And this word was the trigger word, ancient technology. My floodgate opened. I had to deliver the message, no matter what other people are thinking. And his answer was more or less, Chaka, I was waiting for that, because they told him through me that he is going to build and invent something new, which is more or less 5D technology. And that's how I understood, because the pyramids they were glowing from the inside with white light. And I always perceive divine energy or higher energy as white light when I'm looking with my inner eye. So I knew the pyramids are energy machines. They were used to harness the energy of the earth, the magnetic energy, and by the construction and the form, the energy is swirling in a special form, and it comes out at the top of the pyramid and is also kind of a carrier wave for communication, because there's a light beam going up. They even measured that at the Bosnian pyramids. There's 28 kilohertz coming out of the pyramid. And it's not getting weaker the higher it gets. That's against our normal physics laws. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, the wave going out from the top of the pyramid to the universe or cosmos, however you want to name that. So that's what I know about. I'm still trying to find out. I don't know everything. And I found out that with sound, you can't only levitate, but you can also open portals. So sound was very, very important for the ancients. And it makes sense to me, because nowadays I'm also working with sound and toning and overtones and things like that. So there's a range we don't know. The old Hindus said Nada Brahma, the world is sound. And it is said that the first sound, like in the Bible, the spirit was hovered above the waters and then said, let there be light. So speaking is sound. And the first Hindu sound is the special, if you tone and the vibrating at the end with the closed lips. That's in homeopathy, the sound for the bones, because it vibrates your whole body. I'm sure that a lot of things happen when you get the right sound.
Absolutely. And I wanted to come back to the pyramids having this high point where basically it harnesses the energy of the earth. Because I remember I was once told that, in a Christian church, the part that is in front of the altar is also very high. There's like a cupola. I hope that's the right English word. But there's that part, right, that's higher than any other point of the church. And somebody told me when I go pray, it was an advice, to always stand underneath that point, because they said the energy of God, or the energy at least, is highest at that point. Is there any truth to that?
Well, if you look at the cathedrals from medieval Europe, they are so beautiful and wonderful. And when I started to work with sound and sacred geometry, all these geometric patterns and the first 5 geometric platonic solids, I found a lot of that in the architecture again. And I knew that the masons that built all these cathedrals were very much influenced from the spiritual side. They came from the Templars, or, that line of Hermeticism and the Gnostics, the first Christians that still knew that you can form a vortex, open up a connection to the cosmos, the universe, or God, the divine. And of course, you need some kind of free space, a lot of free space above your head, because if you pray there and speak or sing so that the sound can spiral up and transport vibration and frequency, and also magnetically bring back matching vibration and frequency. So that's, you pray to God and he's answering. But our nowadays psychiatry says, well, if you pray and talk to God, that's okay. But if he answers you, then you are crazy, you're schizophrenic. Wow, I think that really needs some healing, because we're with so many false beliefs running around, programmed, mind washed. And most of that is wrong and keeps us from following our inner voice.
Beautiful. So we kind of got into really deep topics, but we haven't done, I think, the starting point, which is tell me how you got interested in ancient philosophy and ancient architecture, and how did you start getting in touch with the spirit world?
Well, even as a child, I thought this cannot be all. There must be something more. I don't want to live like my parents, get old, work, and have children, and then someday you die, and that was it. I thought there must be some more. This seems senseless to me. And I was always searching for the sense or the purpose of my life. And well, when I had my NDE experience in India, I only thought that I'm dying there, but I was kind of convinced because before I entered the Taj Mahal, I had this feeling I'm connected to this building. Maybe I was a worker or a servant. I didn't dare to think that I was the Shah or his dead wife, who are said to be buried there. But I felt this connection and I knew I'm dying in there. That's why I didn't want to enter it, although before I went there with the rickshaw to see it in the moonlight. And during this experience, because I was kind of so convinced I'm dying in there, thought creates. Maybe I created this experience, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting little details that don't match. But I had the experience of going into the tunnel, or more or less hovering or levitating. I wasn't using my feet. And then the tunnel suddenly was blocked by a gigantic wall. And on this wall, that was kind of very biblical, appeared fire writing telling me, you're not going to die now. Go back to Germany. Around your corner, the Rosicrucians have the knowledge you seek. And before I made my journey to India to find the purpose of my life, as if it is only there, but I was 24 something, thinking stupid things, I found that I had a public talk from the Rosicrucians, because I was interested spiritually and looking around and seeking. And then appears this message on the wall in the tunnel of the near-death experience, telling me go back to Germany and follow the Rosicrucians. That was kind of very practical advice. So I went back to Germany and I rushed into the center of them. And I had this feeling, I was totally ignited. I have to become a disciple. And they said, oh, calm down, please, Mrs. Just inform yourself. We have a course over 12 evenings every week, one evening. And after that, you can decide. But that's how I came in contact with Gnostic and Hermetic knowledge, which I think is really profound. And after nearly 20 years, I had enough of this only theory, because they weren't very practical. And later on, I understood, well, it was very literal. It wasn't written, they live the knowledge or they practice it. They stood on the wall. They have it. So if you don't apply the knowledge, it's not good for anything. And that was the point I reached. And I thought, well, I have my head full of philosophy and things, but I need practice. And then I left the Rosicrucians and wanted to live my life of my own. And then I had some more experiences that were kind of difficult, because I was confronted with death, not my own one, but very near, close people to me. And after my husband died, the great big love of my life, after 4 years of relationship in a hospital with cancer, I was still kind of struck like with lightning, but he wanted me to accompany him. And that was the best experience of my life. Although my ego would have never chosen that. I thought, well, it's horrible sitting there, seeing your husband dying and being helpless. And no, it wasn't like that. I was really lucky. I already got a picture the moment he left his body with the last breath. I saw him on the other side dancing and chipping around and singing. So I thought by myself, okay, even I get it. You're good, you're okay, you're well on the other side, everything is fine. That's the only thing you want to know of someone you love. And it also proved to me, okay, so there is really, already I had experienced in my near death experience, there is some kind of afterlife. The soul never dies. There is a bigger you that just changes bodies and incarnations like clothes. So after that experience, I wanted to know more, and it was still kind of selfish in the beginning. I wanted to communicate better with my husband on the other side. And I was searching in the internet for mediumship trainment. And when I found the site of my teachers, I felt my husband on my left side. It was fiery hot, and I saw him jumping with joy, kind of telling me, go there, I'm coming with you. That's the right address, the right way. So I went to that mediumship trainment, and that opened the door. And now I can communicate with a lot of unseen beings and energies. And I really love it how that opened up my horizon and gave me, the basic structure and tactics, how to deal with all the unseen. Because if you talk to even so called normal people, everybody has somewhere a strange experience that he cannot explain or she cannot understand. And we wonder about these things, yes, because there's an unseen realm that also influences the 3D visible world. That's it.
It does. That was a lot of information, a very in a nutshell. So, do you still speak to your husband? Do you still have contact with him?
Yes, but I don't abuse it. I only call him when it's really necessary. Sometimes he appears by himself. And in the beginning, it was just like, these little icons in the computer. I saw his head, and it was more or less working like with a pendulum. I asked him yes and no questions, and he made yes and no. And then he brought in a third variation of that was really funny. There was an old fashioned toy for children that was this little ape or a bear that was going like this, like a musician, and was making a lot of noise. And he started to introduce that. When I saw him in his icon making like that, I knew, oh, there's a surprise on my way, coming my way, something that will surprise me. And he was always right when he appeared like that, announcing a surprise to me. Next day or a week later, something happened. And
Oh.
now I can really talk like I talk with you. I mean, I put the question inside and I call him, and I can see him coming and he's answering or showing me in pictures. I asked the spirit world in the beginning of my mediumship trainment to give me really unmistakable signs and things that I can't misunderstand, because misinterpretation that's kind of the first step. The best example I once heard from a colleague in USA, Suzanne Giesman. She was giving a course for psychic senses training, and she asked the people to do the exercise in twos, also one on one. And there was a man, he dived into the energy of his partner, a woman, and then he came running to her saying, oh, I saw something horrible. I cannot tell her that. No. And she said, okay, describe me what you saw. And the guy started, well, I saw the front of a house, but above the entrance, there was written funeral home. So this pure woman is going to die. I cannot tell her that. And Suzanne said, stop. That's your interpretation. Go back and only describe without judging. That means this. Only describe you saw the house, you saw the sign, and wait for her reaction. So she sent him back. He did as he was told. And his partner, the woman, said, "Yeah, that's the house of my parents. My father had a funeral business. I was living and growing up there, and I loved the house, and I had a happy childhood." So, all this, going to die, that was his program. You get certain pictures and you have the wrong interpretation. If I say something like black churchyard or tomb or hospital and accident, you won't find what they all have in common. Somebody who knows astrology knows exactly, oh, that's Saturn, the Saturn principle. And it's working not like we are used to think in horizontal chains of analogies. That's no horizontal. Yeah, horizontal is that. That's vertical analogies because the Saturn principle is kind of coming over the threshold, is dealing with blockades and barriers and hindering energies. So you can have accidents when you don't watch for your Saturn, and if you don't care, you can get sick and come into the hospital. The last kind of scary picture for us is death and the churchyard and tomb. But as I know now, that's just transitioning into another kind of state, because my husband is still alive very much, and he's even going to visit my friends and giving them some hints and ideas. So we live in such a small world and we think it's only this. No, it's not. There's so much more, and we're mostly wrong with what we think. So we better care for what we feel, because feeling is always kind of one pointed. You can think, shall I go left, shall I go right, what shall I do here or there? That's polarity. But the heart knows, I like this and I don't like it, and there's no discussion. When you don't like it something, and that's kind of clear. And I love the clear speak of feelings, because you can't lie on that level, more or less, not even to yourself, because you feel it. If you don't feel good, there's something to do about that.
So, do you use feelings a lot when, for instance, you have to make a decision? Do you usually center yourself and think, how do I feel about the one option versus the other?
Exactly.
So it's connecting to your own intuition and inner wisdom. Do you think we all have this compass? Sorry, you were going to say something.
Now, we all have it, but we don't use it because we were trained to not use it, to follow the thought and do the rational and logic thing in every aspect of our life. And the first thing after my mediumship training that I always had for nearly 2 years on my ear at night when I'm in the alpha meditative state shortly before falling asleep, I had the spirit world telling me, it's only going through the heart. The heart is the entrance. Feelings is the door. So care for your feelings and feel more. And I was so intellectual, so in my head. So I really had to train that. But if you go inside and just ask the question inside, how do I feel about this? And how do I feel about that? You will get an instant reaction, because this body vessel is kind of a biological feedback mechanism. Whenever you come in contact with truth, your body shows you as well. You get goosebumps, or suddenly you get tears in your eyes because you encountered something true. Within a word somebody said, a sentence from a movie or whatever, or an animal looking at you and not running away scared because of the human.
So, very often, what I would get is I tend to get strong feelings when I meet somebody new. So, it always happens when I'm face to face, so physically in the same space as somebody. And it doesn't always happen with everybody. But sometimes I have a strong positive feeling, which is that I like that person and that they're a good human being. And sometimes, and I could not tell you why I like them, And other times it's the opposite. And I think, no, that's not a good person. And there's nothing that I can tell in terms of how they look or how they present themselves that would be the logical way of thinking. So is that something that you think we should trust when we have like that kind of a strong feeling towards people?
Yes, that's the so-called first impression. And that's what a medium learns and trains to work with. Before the mind comes in talking, oh, how can you know that? You never met with that person, blah, 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 blah. You know, because your inner sensorium, the feeling senses, they detect energy wise in the other one opposite from you the patterns that match your vibration and what is not matching, you know. And if a lot of that person's energy and feelings and whatever is not matching, then you kind of feel repelled. And there's surely unconsciously coming in more information because, as I know now from some talks with my ETs, they, when they look at us, they are outside of the earth, so there already is higher consciousness, and they're not in this confined, you know, since thousands of years religiously societal trained false belief thing, how to view reality and what is good and what is not good. They see all our incarnations in one moment when they look at you. They know who you were and they know what you've done in other lives. So they have a more complete perception of yourself. And I think a kind of unaware, unconscious glimpse like that also we perceive, only we don't understand what it is, you know. But we should all listen to the first impression and train that even more, because the seat of the intuition is more or less the solar plexus, and that's the belly region, the stomach, you know, and that reacts very strongly to everything. And it's not to make a judgment, because what might be good for you and feeling good now is okay for you but not for your neighbor. So you can't generalize. You have to feel and sense into whatever is in front of you every time again anew, and find your relationship to that. Do I want to go with that or not? And if you say, no, thank you, that doesn't mean you judge the other. I mean, we're trained to judge, you know, but I love the simple things. They say, like an old saying, if you point the finger at someone, three fingers are always pointing at yourself. So better look first in yourself. And because the world is a mirror and shows you what you cannot perceive inside yourself. So you can say, oh, okay, that aggressive guy is showing me that I'm aggressive. Yes, and that makes sense because anger isn't well seen in this world. So we're all trained to suppress it. But it's a neutral, active, strong power. Depends on how you use it. I can kill my neighbor with it, and I can chop wood with it and make a fire and warm my neighbor and myself with it. So it depends. What's the intent, the focus? Where do you want to go?
Absolutely. And because you brought in judgment, I'm really curious. A lot of us, I think, were brought up in a society where we're taught and we learn culturally to judge people, right? Because it's also what you learn even in business school. You want to learn if is somebody likely to work with you? How do you get them more likely? So it's very much like what we're trained to do, to estimate who a person is by their appearance. And that really leads to a lot of judgment and a lot of preconceived notion, right? If I see somebody dressed in a suit, then maybe somebody has wronged me that tends to dress in suits. So everybody else, I would think, oh, they're just awful people just because of that one metric. So, how do we get out of this? And I would say this is a bit personal because one of my dear friends, he's struggling for years. He would love to not judge. But again, every little thing that happens, he always has a judgment about it. Everything you do and everybody he meets, he will pass it through the lens of, is this good? Is this not good? What kind of information do I get about you based on this one tiny action? And he's doing his best to let it go, but it's very, very difficult because it's very deeply ingrained. So, how can we help that?
The only thing that really helps, and that's nearly coming back to the pyramid in the two-dimensional, they have polarity, good and bad. So this is like a line from point A to point B. And the brain or thinking, the mental, can only run from here to there, from yes to no, and there is seemingly no exit. But the exit is, you can, in the middle of this line, like the scale in neutrality, there you can make the hypotenuse and come to a higher perspective, that what you call good is as equal as what you call bad, and it's changing places all the time. And there is no absolute good or bad or truth or lie. It's all very relative because it's viewed through our filters and our personality, our upbringing, belief in religious authority or teachers or science, whatever. All this forms kind of our filters, how we perceive something. So the only way to get out of judgment is to become neutral and really understand, like the old Greek philosopher Heraclit said, and he was said to be the obscure one because nobody understood him at his time. He said, the opposite of a truth is as equally right. So in a dual world, you always have the two poles, and you can't judge something as good or bad. It's only like if you use a pendulum with the yes and no, the energy is weak or strong. But that doesn't mean that it's bad, because sometimes what we call bad might be good for another person. Who knows? So we're very, very limited in our judgment. And the spirit world told me two things. They said, you were never supposed to go down the road of judgment. You were only supposed to discern by feeling what you feel as good and prefer, and what you don't feel as good. And you're allowed, because freedom of choice is also allowed, to negate something and say, no, thank you, I don't want that. And the second thing that was kind of hit for me, they said there are only three sorts of things or matters. Your own ones, the only ones to care about, because you don't even know your own soul plan. So how can you say anything about someone else? You don't know his or her soul plan. So stick to your own things and don't mix into the others and judge about them. The second sort of things are the things of the others. And the third time of matter is the matter of God. And He knows surely better than you how to care for that. And there is only one exception. Only mix into or try to help another if you are asked to. And don't give your opinion and what you think if you're not asked. The other one, if he really wants to know, will ask you. And if you not being asked, put everybody on top of everybody, your opinions, you're going outside of yourself all the time. That's kind of a psychological deviation. You're avoiding your own themes, because in here, that's where the music is. It's everything in here, and the outside world is just a mirror. And Jesus said to us, don't judge, because with the way you judge others, you will be judged. And this was what I experienced in my near-death experience. There was no one there to judge me, no council, no angels, no God on a throne. It was me, myself, looking at the pictures of my life and the situations, and I felt instantly, whoa, that was wrong. I didn't do well. I failed. That was kind of, but there was no judgment. I was judging myself. So it makes a lot of sense to me now that many channelers and spiritual people in the internet come with the same message. don't be so harsh on yourself, because the same way you are talking to yourself inside of you now, you will judge yourself at the point when you excarnate and leave the body. So better change your attitude towards yourself. And the best thing and healthiest thing is love yourself. And that's also some kind of misunderstanding, because in the Bible, it's just said the other way around. You know how to phrase that. They say, love your neighbor. And then comes very little, like a subliminate clause, which is not important, like you love yourself. Tell you what, if you don't love yourself, how will you ever be able to love another one? This is where you can train and practice self-love and compassion. And if you're able to love yourself and have compassion with yourself and stop judging yourself, then you're also not going to do that to others.
I
That's
love that.
logic. But you see, we're trained with so many things that lead us in the wrong direction. We are told that this is selfish or narcissistic. I mean, you can discern a narcissistic person that's all about it or her or himself from somebody who's just calmly in himself or herself, and let others be like they are, because you also want to be yourself. So allow others as well. And without mistakes, we can't learn if we do everything perfectly. So where's the fun? Where's the challenge? The game would be over in 5 minutes.
I love the concept of self love. I think it's one of the most difficult things that we can achieve, like proper self love, like to truly be okay with ourselves, with what we like about ourselves, with what we don't like about ourselves, seeing the reality of ourselves without judging it, without thinking, I should have been smarter, I should have been prettier, I should have been taller, I should have been skinnier.
You know what? Should, would, that's all the special form that's dealing with non reality. What if is also about non reality. The only actual reality is here now. I couldn't have responded differently. So that's neither a fault nor inability or whatever. It was so at the moment. And if I'm uncomfortable with that, well, next moment I can change it. It's up to me. I have free will. If I was grumpy yesterday, I can decide today, do I want to stay grumpy? It doesn't feel very good, not for me and not for the others. So I do something to make me feel happy. I play some music, I go barefoot to my garden, or I dance 5 minutes with my favorite song to come into a better, higher vibration. And I decide not to be grumpy because I don't like it.
Exactly. I think we have so much choice that we don't understand. And what I
Exactly.
also believe is that when we truly get to the point of loving ourselves or accepting ourselves at the very least, I think you tend to be much less judgmental to others. Because if your standards to yourself are just so impossible to meet, if you're convinced you need to be this whole other person to be okay and for the world to be okay with you, then you're going to look around you and you're going to think, well, why aren't they living by the same standards? Why do I have to change? And why are you okay? Why are you at peace? And I've seen this once with another friend of mine, and it was driving him crazy that I was so okay with myself. I mean, I know that I'm not perfect, absolutely, but I'm okay with who I am. And I think nothing is more triggering for somebody who's very much into the judgment mode than people that are okay and accepting of themselves. But it's truly the gift of peace that I think that you can offer yourself.
Exactly. And the spirit world told me, it's not about being perfect. It's about being yourself, being Sabrina, being Gabrielle, being who you are. And not trying to bend to the will of others to please them or whatever. And if you're only doing good and performing well, if others are watching, well, that's easy to fake. But the thing is, spirit is always watching. Are you performing when you're alone and you have no public around you clapping and saying, "Oh, you're great, you're doing wonderful"? Are you still doing well then? Without, the opinion of others? That's it. You have to follow your truth, no matter what the others think. And that's kind of difficult, I know. But if you allow the others to bring you away from your inner truth or your path, it's never turning out good. You have to come back and find out, maybe you're disappointed in relationships or something like that, to bring you back to, what do I want? What is my wish? How do I want to create my life? And also by that, you if you want something positive, then it's radiating out for others as well. So in this very well-known stunt kind of channeling work, Ra, the law of one, they talk about service to self and service to others. And when I got it, it was quite simple, because I'm not losing anything. If I try to do good for others, I'm doing good for myself as well. But if I try in the first place to do good for me and then for the others, that's kind of a different situation. So I'm still in the first place. But if you're doing and helping or trying to help and doing positive things for everyone, for all, then it's including you. And I can't even pray for myself, for only my neighbors, my loved ones. I pray for all living sentient beings, that they find peace or get something they need, the healing energy they all need, the amount and the duration they need. So, I mean, we are in the end all one, as all the messengers from Source, coming as Buddha, Jeshua, whoever, already told us thousands of years. And again, it's all inside. So it's up to us. And we really have, every second in our life, we have the free will choice. I can choose to be a victim, or I can choose to step out and say, no. I understood only after a few years that freedom of choice doesn't mean to say yes to everything, because I don't know, maybe that's the way I have to go to. No, it's also the freedom to say no to the things that don't feel good for you. And you don't have to do something only because someone else tells it. That's the sovereignty of the soul, decide your own path. And the soul already knows the path. There's not very much you have to decide. You can just listen and follow, and then you will get more and more. And I think the things will better, because I still remember when I was 20, oh, everything was so, like a drama queen. It took me years to come over certain things. Now I'm older and it takes only weeks or days, and I'm so happy that I'm kind of getting wise just by getting older and having more experiences to handle all the things a bit more, peacefully and silently and calmly. And it's working as well, and much easier.
Absolutely. And because we're on this topic, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the world we live in right now. It's a world filled with division. We seem to all have different opinions, and there's not just that there's wars going on and there's, elections, but we're so at odds with each other. It seems like the problems of the government, of the politics, we take upon ourselves, and we turn against the people that are around us because of our beliefs. And it almost seems like there's never been so much division based on, only a few years ago, there was a division based on, are you vaccinated or not? And whatever the choice was, if two people had different choices, they were sort of, their relationship had to suffer, even though they didn't the choice of the one person did not necessarily affect the other, right? So we are free to choose. But tell me, how do you see the world we live in now? And what do you think or feel are the next steps? Do you think it's the worst we've ever had? Do you think it's going to get worse? And what does worse or better mean?
I don't really think that worse and better exist. I think, well, the spirit world told me, there is no fixed future. They said it's in front of you, your next step, and it's 50-50. Of course, your old choices have some kind of influence. If you broke your leg some years ago, maybe you're not going to be the best marathon runner, but you can still walk and run and use your legs. So our input is what makes the future. We create here and now the future. And if we create it from fear, and all the mass media try to keep us in fear and even scare us more with could be more horrible things, that's some kind of very tricky busyness. Because in the ancient days, without internet and everything, just imagine 300 years ago, when a sack of rice fell down in some kind of port in China, you never came to know about that. And you don't have to know about that because it's not really important, even if someone died by this sack of rice falling onto him. But now, with the mass media, we are confronted with every catastrophe that is there in the world, and it all wants to pull out our fear and keep us in a state where we don't function well. Because when you're in fear, you can't really think, and you can't make a good and informed choice. And it already seems to me that's kind of the pattern. If you look at history in a bigger picture, there's always war and famine and pestilence, whatever, and just the ranks are changing. Sometimes it's first the pestilence and then the war and then the famine and then the other way around. We have this for thousands and thousands of years, always the same thing repeating. And as the spirit world says, that we're now at the end of a very big cycle, cosmic cycle, that includes our possibility after 75,000 years development of the soul, learning the lessons of the third density or third dimension, to ascend or to shift, or however you want to name that. So that's why there's talk about the pole shift and the magnetic anomalies, that the magnetic field of the earth is getting weaker, which has a direct correlation with psychic abilities. And at the same time, you have the sun activities, which is kind of going to a solar maximum every 11 years, a solar minimum or a solar maximum, with a lot of flares and explosions and cosmic rays coming to the earth. And with a weaker magnetic field, of course, that impacts more onto the earth. And that kind of prepares our consciousness to step out into the next fourth dimension and then to the fifth dimension, because it's a kind of evolution process through all the dimensions, and we're more or less still at the starting part of that. But everybody feels that, and that also needs the decision. Do I fall for that? Do I feel okay when I'm worried all the time about wars and the world and everything getting worse? So by this, we are helping create what we do not want, because they are directing all our thoughts to misery, catastrophe, and war outside. So this is neither fruitful nor sane nor healthy, and it's not furthering anything. You can only create positive when you're in good state, so at least neutral and not vibrating in the low frequencies like anger, fear, hate, frustration, and whatever, at least you got to be neutral. And for this we have to work more now inside to not get distracted by all these horror pictures they are showing us, because they use our creative power. If you buy into that and you adapt these pictures and have them inside of you and nurture them, then you help manifest what you do not want. Because ask somebody on the street, they all want peace. They want to live in peace with their neighbors, and they are even more or less ready to accept the diversity. Yes, we have different skin colors and different religions, whatever one might believe. In the end, I was told all the religions are man-made. There is only one source, and even the E.T.s know that. And they can't see the angels. That's very interesting. You can only perceive what's below your dimension or density, and rarely what's above. So you have to raise your vibration to perceive what's above that. Alex Collier, a 40-year physical contactee of the Andromedans, I think. Yes, the Andromedans. He once shared with them his angel experience. He once had, in a very sad, kind of depressive moment, he didn't want to live any longer and would have liked to get out of here. And then he had the appearance of an angel, maybe his guardian angel. He did not classify that. It doesn't matter. An angel appeared and just embraced him and held him. And then his mood got better and he got new impulse. And when he told that to the Andromedans on the ship, they were very interested, and they had the technology to make him share his inner picture with them. And when they saw that, they told him, we have never encountered angels. And there are 6-dimensional or whatever. So the angels are coming from the higher dimensions. I think they are below the source. I was told source is in the 13th dimension, and the angelic collectives and higher developed collectives, they're all in the 12th dimension. So they can perceive all the other beings below, but the beings below cannot always perceive the beings from higher dimensions. And the humans are an exception, because we've got the whole package of source. We are multidimensional. If we care for our soul path and walk in that direction, we activate more and more of that in us. And we can see through all the dimensions, while some of the E.T.s on 4th or 5th, they can only see and perceive what's below, but not what is above. Isn't that interesting?
Definitely. And you've mentioned E.T.s quite a few times. So for our standard definition, how do you define an E.T., and what kind of an energy lies there? What are their intentions with us?
Well, there are, of course, because this is still a polar world, there are the so-called good guys and the so-called bad guys. There are E.T.s, usually mostly it's the greys and some reptilians. Well, every species has good and bad. You have highly spiritual reptilians in other star systems, and you also have the negative ones that are only like colonizers that want to control and get riches and wealth and get everything out of the colony, the planet, like gold and rare earth and whatever, and also the creative power of the divine souls, which is also kind of harvested. So you have a variety of beings, but as our human race was interfered various times with genetically by different species who had on this great experiment Earth their small little experiments running with maybe the Neanderthals and the Denisovans and all the others. But there is a special mark, there are some very funny things. 200,000 years ago, suddenly appeared from out of nowhere the Homo erectus type, the Homo sapiens, and he had a double brain volume. Where does this come from? Only from genetic interference. And this happened several times, and several groups interfered. So some tried to help us and to fasten our evolution, because source time doesn't exist. Source has all the time of the world, so source allows itself millions and millions of years of development for life forms on whatever star systems and whatever planets. And some of our elder brothers, that the races or species that are millions of years more evolved than we are, and more ahead, advanced technically and spiritually, they wanted to help us and fasten our evolution to get to the point of ascension, or the shift, or however we want to call that, faster. And the regressive groups, they wanted to keep us like sheep. They don't want to lose their cattle they feed off. So you have two kind of agendas that are trying here on earth, and you can easily discern that, of course, the negative, they try to keep us in war and fear and everything catastrophic, so that we can't become clear and say, no, we don't want that. It's enough. Cut it off now. I'm not going to do that. And the other side is trying to speak to our soul and to all the positive traits and energies in us, and to further that. And that's really some kind of split. You can see that some people, they get grumpier and grumpier and grumpier, but they already were negative years ago. And the other ones that try to be positive and work and understand their own inner being and life and what's my path, my mission, whatever, they get more blissed out. So that's kind of the split. And the spirit world told me that it's more or less humanity is coming to a crossroads. And it was said that not everyone will ascend, but the last thing I heard also from other channelers in the internet is, by experiencing COVID with everything rigid and harsh it brought, we made a very big step in our inner development and found out the only thing important is the relations. And when we're cut off from each other, we don't feel well. So we understood what's really important. And by that, by acknowledging and understanding that, we made a shift in our psyche, and that already helped that many more people than expected from the so-called original plan will ascend as well, and will find the way out of this 3D world, which is getting some kind of sucking.
Wow, that's very deep. So, when you talk about ascending and that some people will ascend and others will not, what would be the conditions for somebody that wants to experience those higher realms, that wants to have a peaceful life in the afterlife?
Well, to train that in this life and be the peace you long for, be the friendly person you would like to meet in the supermarket that just smiles at you. You can smile at a stranger, maybe you make him happy, feel happy for a moment, who knows. Children do that all the time. As a grown up, we don't allow us, I cannot smile at a stranger, what will he think, something like that. Well, if we just radiate what we believe in outwards, we will spread light, and then we're on the right path, and we're already doing it. And this is raising your vibration to higher and higher frequencies, and then you will automatically, more or less, enter into higher frequency realms. And it's not that the one that don't ascend, the bad ones or the stupid ones. There are people, I even had a girlfriend years ago who knew all this, and she said, Yes, but I love this earth so much, and I love animals and the sunlight and the plants, and I want a little bit more of that. I know that I'm kind of negating ascension or enlightenment, but I want some more 3D experience. And she knew there's nothing lost. She can do another cycle, maybe not in this 3D world, but there are other 3D worlds where we can go to if we want more of that. And when we are ready, we can ascend as well. So it's just our false ideas of win and lose. And the spirit world told me, we don't work win lose. We only work win win if not both parties have some gain. We're not even engaging because that's fruitless. Isn't that
Mm.
interesting, energy wise?
I love that. And I think it's so different, right, than our social construct where
Yeah,
we're used to if I win, you lose. If you lose, then I win. And there's always we look for that, right? If I get more, then you have less. And it's so difficult to understand that there is enough. We can all have enough and we can all have what we want to have because we don't all want the same thing.
exactly. And if you really have peace inside of you, you cannot have more peace because if you encompass that feeling, there is no more and no less. All these categories fall away and fall apart. And the easiest way to get into this, the musicians even name that, it's kind of the flow state. And it's academically said when your expectations towards yourself match your abilities, so what you can do, then you're kind of in a matching vibration. And then it's all flowing and it's effortlessly because you don't want too much of yourself. You don't create pressure. Oh, I have to be good. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to do it this way. You just, okay, I can drum two rhythms. I learned them now, and it's making fun, and I'm happy just creating some music. It's about not expecting too much and not exaggerating or underviewing yourself. And everybody has talent. If you train something like with a bicycle, first times you fall. If you don't get onto it again and carry on, you might not learn it, but you have to learn it with some mistakes and then take the bicycle away. And 40 years later, you still know how to do it because you once did it. Everything you practice goes into your cells, they have consciousness as well. I mean, I can't remember the name of the rhythms from drumming patterns, and I can't even write them down because that's the logic, other half of the brain. But my hands know how to play them as if the cells know it. And I don't have to break my brain to what was the name of this rhythm. And that's so funny how learning works. The whole system is learning. And in music, I had some of these moments, the flow state, suddenly the walls fall away. It's like being in eternity. There's only music. I am music. I'm not playing anything. Music is coming through me. And that's so wonderful. And even if it's only a minute, that's what really satisfies and makes you happy. And you can have the flow state while gardening, while arranging flowers in your vase and putting it in your living room. You can make every moment a meditation, even washing the dishes. If you start to do the dishes, then you already put a negative layer onto it. Just try to enter it neutrally and put on a nice music maybe, and then it's going more easy. And then you can have a positive experience. We can change all our experiences by at least starting neutrally and not aiming at too high expectations, and just going with the flow and allowing it to be nice as well. It's useful to do the dishes, but it can also be nice. You can dance a little bit, whatever. You're free. Create your moment to moment and make your life happy. You know the best how to do it. You don't need anyone else to tell you what feels good for you. So just do more of that.
Wise words, and it almost sounds so easy.
It is easy, you know. There were people who had also near death experiences, and in this process of going up to source, to higher knowledge and higher dimensions, and coming down, there is this moment where you suddenly have the feeling, I know it all, I understand it all for the first time. And then you come back into your body and you have the remembrance that you knew it, but you can't speak it in this world because already language, you know, it's one word after the other and it takes time, but everything is there simultaneously. And sometimes it's unexpressible in this world. That's why the Zen guys, you know, that's so funny with the koans that really kick out your brain. What's the clapping of the one hand? I mean, you clap with two hands, so what's the clapping of the one hand? And the answer to that koan is not a sentence. You have to show by a motion or something you do that you understood the question, and you have to show the answer kind of in gesture. So that's a funny thing. So that is the proof that you understood it, and you have a different action, you know, after that. I hope
Yeah,
I'm not too theoretically, but I really love that because the koans, they are the system of Asia to get away from the brain and get a different access to things we usually don't even think about, you know, clapping the hands. How do you clap with one hand?
that's fascinating. And I'm sure that it's definitely not theoretical, but if I know our audience and the people watching, I think they absolutely love it and they would love to geek out and hear even more about it. But let me ask you about your mediumship. So you work as a medium, and I think that's a fantastic line of work and it's fascinating. Tell me, to you, what was the most interesting part of this job and the most fulfilling part?
Well, to me, the most fulfilling part is, of course, when I get some kind of feedback, which I usually don't get. Because it's a bit like you go to a doctor when you have a physical problem, and many people kind of ask the doctor, give me a pill to make it go away. So there is no inner work that's done about that because every region of the body already is speaking a lot, and the symptoms are trying to catch your attention because soul does not speak in words, it speaks in feelings, vibrations. So if it hurts, then you start to listen and you ask yourself, why is my knee hurting all the time? And I learned with the time, you know, all the regions of the body. Legs are for walking, that's the movement apparatus. So maybe there's the question, you should move on maybe in your life. Are you moving on or are you avoiding it? And that can create maybe a problem in your knees or in your legs, you know. So you already get an idea about the kind of conflict that's behind a symptom. And I usually do my best to help the people with whatever problems they have. I found out the hard way, I had to learn it, that there are some things where I cannot do anything. But luckily, my spirit guides told me if it's kind of a karmic thing, and I don't want to dive into this discussion about karma still exists or not. Some people said, no, it's already deleted. You know, I stick with the Hermetic tradition because what's written on who was this, Hermes Trismegistus and Thoth the Atlantean, his sentences, that's just true, you know. Cause and effect is the most simple wording for me to avoid karma, because if I take something in my hand and I let it drop, it will drop. So that's cause and effect. And every decision, whatever I do in life, is causing an effect. So I have to find out what's the real cause. And if soul is talking in pictures and is showing me by a region of my body where something is not in order, I can do something. But if it's kind of chosen lesson of the soul to work it out herself, or whatever kind of solution or even non-solution the soul wants to experience, then I cannot give healing energy and take this lesson away. I would take away the chance of growth from the person. So I had some cases like that where I was sending healing energy and again and again and again, and nothing changed. And I asked myself, am I doing something wrong? Why is it not working? And then I heard my guide saying, she needs the lesson. You can't take away anything from that. And I had to learn if I really work with light or let the light work through me with the auric field of a person and remove some old trauma and heal it. You have to seal kind of the space where the negative energy or the trauma sat before, because if you take it out, more or less, or the light takes a trauma away, then there is some kind of vacuum which will be filled again with something else which is of the similar vibration than the conflict before. So you have to seal it. Like if you have a wound on your hand, you put a band-aid on, not to let bacteria enter. And I had to learn that I have to seal the things afterwards with white light that I removed from the field of a person. And then I found other mediums that told the same kind of experience. And if I'd known it before, I could have read it maybe somewhere. But I like learning by doing, because then nobody can take it away from me. It's really integrated. And I found that so funny when I tried to play traverse flute. I couldn't even read notes, and I still cannot, not properly. And I was imitating what the flute teacher was doing. And then he discovered that my eyes were not on the notes and following the notes. So he just took the notebook and he closed it and said, okay, play it. And I couldn't play it without the notes because I imitated what he was doing. And then he found out, you're imitating me. That's also very creative. And you don't know how to read notes. And I was flushing with red. No, like inability. And I found out what I play from the notes. If you take the notes away, I cannot play it because it's not inside of me. But what I find myself, even with the errors, playing a false tone when I want to find this melody, this is really worked through and integrated, and I can play it anywhere, everywhere without notes. I don't need the papers. So it's mine. I own it. And that's important, that you own your own experiences. No one can take that away from you. And I think it's about exactly that. Acknowledging our own experiences, how we change. We are no longer the person we were 5 years ago. And I don't want to be the Gabrielle I was 5 years ago, because I know what changed and I like the change that came into my life. I think I'm on a better course now than I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So change, we don't always want it, but in the end, it's movement and it's bringing us to somewhere. They like to use in the spiritual world these image of all rivers lead to the ocean. And then some people with their ego get kind of scared. Yes, my individuality, I'm a drop in the ocean, and then I lose my individuality and I'm the ocean and no longer a drop. And the Sufi, the esoteric tradition of Islam, they have wonderful poets that try to speak the unspeakable truth of the invisible worlds and higher consciousness into poetic verses. They say, you are not the drop in the ocean. You are the whole ocean in one drop. Isn't that wonderful? We are divine, only we don't know, and we were never told. And it seems like a pattern that they try to keep us away from that knowledge and realization that we are more than only this.
That's so beautiful. And indeed, it seems like everything is trying to keep us apart, right? From understanding that we are the ocean, that we are one. And I think also the message that we're all connected, that we're all part of the same universe, part of the same being. It just seems that it's not coming back into the mainstream narrative. But I do think that the people that have that feeling and that know that we're connected, that we're all part of the same universe, that believe in oneness, I think those people get it, and the rest will have to catch up eventually.
It is said that everybody will return to source. Some with a whole sack full of experiences, others maybe with a smaller sack, and some, the so called bad guys, with no sack at all. But we're all coming back and we're all in this grand recycling because it's just experiences. And you need some bad experience to say afterwards, okay, this I don't want ever again. To be really sure and clear about what you want and what you don't want. And don't stay stuck with what you don't want. Just turn around and ask yourself, and what do I want? Because that's the way that leads you further.
Exactly. Rephrasing it into what the life that we want to create for ourselves is. I feel we've gotten into really interesting stories. We've gotten into the ancient architecture, we've gotten into sound, otherworldly beings. But I think we skimmed through your near death experience, and I was really interested in knowing how you got to India, what happened there. I think the overview or the summary of it, but it would be lovely to hear it if you could tell me why you were there, what happened, and just so I can ask all of my questions at once. How did you feel about it afterwards? What did you think happened?
I wasn't sure what happened. I couldn't understand it. 1981 doesn't even the word near death experience existed. And I just went with the sentence I saw written on the wall inside the tunnel during the near death experience. I tried to change my ticket and went back to Germany and went to the Rosicrucians. And they were kind of, they really had the ancient knowledge. And we were reading and talking and studying about all the different religions, not only Christianity. It was about Hinduism, everything, and Islam and Judaism. So I got a broad view and I understood, well, they're all talking about the same. No matter how the outer look is, they're all talking about one God. And that's the same experience I had, that there is something bigger than me. And there is a bigger energy, or however you want to name that, you know. And then the Rosicrucians were very much only about theory. They were not that much into practice. Even meditation to them was kind of occult practice. And occult only means hidden. But I got the impression to them it means kind of black magic, bad. Many people get this wrong. And they did not want to hear about my experience in India. I got that very quickly and I stopped talking about that. And I more or less repressed it for 40 years. And only now that after 12 or 13 years of mediumship and working as a medium, my guides coming in more clearly, they said, well, they more or less sent me to go out and share some experiences. And I found out when I started talking about that, the story started to have a life of its own and disclosing more aspects which I never saw before or didn't think about before. And it's so funny, I'm not even sure what I experienced. I thought it was a near death experience because I had a life review. And as far as my research goes, you don't have a life review without at least a beginning near death experience. They go together. You don't have the life review OBE or in other kind of circumstances. But the funny thing was, when I entered the Taj Mahal at full moon night on purpose, because somebody told me, well, that's energy wise much more interesting and there are less tourists than during the day. They're all trampling around. And I hadn't seen this entrance to the real cryptic chamber during the day because the room was full of tourists and I didn't see the black hole in the corner. And at night I saw it and I felt drawn to it, but at the same time I didn't want to enter a black hole in the floor. And when I entered it, there was a second room with two sarcophagi, and it was the real tomb, the crypta, that was built under some kind of showroom, which I visited during the day in the first on the first floor, with the copy sarcophagi, and I didn't feel anything and was very disappointed. That's why I went there on full moon night, which was, what a coincidence, next night was full moon night. And when I entered this chamber, there was a guy sitting, looked to me like a normal Indian guy. You can see them all around the streets and they are selling flowers during the day, and you give them some rupee and then you wear a flower necklace or whatever. And there was this Indian man, and when I entered the chamber, he gave me a flower. And I thought he's just a normal guy, and I was fetching for some money to give something back to him. But at the same moment, I had the feeling this is kind of a symbolic situation, as if I'm able to perceive the same situation on a different level. I knew I have been given a gift, the flower, and I have to answer that and give something back. And the only idea my little persona had was give back some money. And I didn't even question what's a guy doing there at full moon night, selling one flower to one tourist. Doesn't make sense at all, because he would earn much more money during the day with more tourists. So that's kind of very odd. And there was even in the comment section somebody who asked me, maybe that was an initiation and that was some kind of local saint who was advised to go there and do that to you. And I remember when I took the flower, I had the feeling I very much later experienced in the flow state in music, that kind of the room changed. The walls were going away. The room was getting wider and more open and longer. And then this guy was toning an which in a totally 100% stone chamber of marble from the Taj Mahal resonates all the quartz crystals and is creating a frequency. Then I boom was out of my body. And the funny thing is, then there is missing time. Even nowadays, it's totally blank. I cannot go there. There's no pictures, no information. Even my guides don't tell me anything. They say sometimes there are things you don't need to know now. So it's not the right time for me to understand. I don't know. And there is missing time, because I found myself back in my hotel room on the bed 4 hours later. And I don't remember taking a rickshaw from the Taj Mahal monument to my hotel, but I remember that I took a rickshaw with two other Scandinavian guys from the same hotel towards the Taj Mahal to have this full moon experience that the white marble is reflecting the moonlight. And the two guys went their ways and I went my way. But I don't remember coming back or how. And missing time usually appears in UFO circumstances. And I've been now, since the last 2 years, astrally on board of ships, so it makes sense to me. Maybe they zapped me out because of whatever and had to do something with me to put me on a different life plan, whatever. But after that near death experience, I knew I had experienced something that was real and felt more real, like this reality. And I wanted to understand it and I wanted to know more. So I went that direction and studied for 20 years with the Rosicrucians. But I really started my journey when I went practical with mediumship trainment to really use this body and the instrument, the senses, the feelings to get data and information about whatever, everything is kind of speaking. If you ever saw the picture of brain cells, these microscopic pictures of the brain network, it looks exactly like the mycelium of fungus under the earth. That's how the plants communicate biologically and chemically. And if you see pictures of what they call dark matter or dark materia in the universe, it's looking the same. It's also some kind of net, a very fine filament of grid work with nodes like the synapses in the brain, and the mycelium of the fungi. So there's an invisible network full of information, and you can get this information if you learn how to ask for information and how to receive it.
I love that. It's such a beautiful story. And I think there's so many interesting lessons that you've learned, I think, through your experiences, but also not just through the things that happened to you, but also the things that you sought out, right? So training with the Rosicrucians, doing a mediumship training, all of those experiences were perhaps calling you, but you also took action to learn, to study, and to develop your gifts. And I think that's what I always love to underline, that things don't just happen to us, but that we also have to match those things with our actions.
And mostly the things that happen to us, like I found out now, they are things we already practiced in other lives. I thought I'm just doing vacation in Europe and then more exotic vacation and holiday. I know now I was visiting all places where I had other lifetimes. I had incarnations in India and Tibet, and I was traveling to Asia in the beginning. Europe I found kind of boring because there was nothing exotic. It's more or less all the same kind of civilization. And South America was totally different. And before I came to South America, I had some kind of prejudice against South America because of the drug cartels and all that stuff. When I came there, I met one of my best friends now. She is a clairvoyant by birth, and she's got Native American Indio blood. And I couldn't speak a single word with her when I saw her the first time, but my heart was going like that. I felt there is a connection. Then I learned Portuguese, and we found out we had some incarnations together. We're interested in the same things, and we could share a lot of experiences and insights. So if you feel attracted to somebody, most times the souls know each other because it's millions and millions of years that all the same souls are around and making experiences and growing and trying this and trying that and finding out what works and what does not work.
Beautiful. I so look forward to meeting the people that were, I think, important to me in other lifetimes.
Well, if you set an intention that you want to feel or to meet your soul tribe, your soul family, we're with them every night when the body sleeps and the ego is out of the way. Then the soul can go to other dimensions and meet the councils and the soul family and whomever. If you put an intention in this life and really in a meditative state, phrase, I want to meet my soul family, members of my soul family here in my life, in the body. And you repeat this, Repetition sometimes is a funny thing. You might find it boring, but all the old spiritual traditions used repetition because by that you start to own it. And if you do it like a prayer every night or every morning, I think after some time you will draw them to you and they will come and you will even recognize them because you have this special feeling as if you know them since eons. And everything is so well known, as if the other could finish your sentences. And it doesn't have to be the romantic relationship thing, the twin flame, that's also sometimes very misleading. You can meet your soul family, and it doesn't always have to be the big love thing. It can be, a bit friction because friction creates heat, and heat in medicine is one of the signs of healing. So, friction heat is also furthering the growing process spiritually because heat is a healing sign. So, you're growing and healing spiritually as well. So, we need some conflicts, although we never want them and we don't like them, but sometimes they are very fruitful.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think challenges and friction, I think it's what keeps us on our toes and what brings us further, right? So there's definitely benefit to that. If there was no need to change, if there was no need to course correct, then we wouldn't do it, right? We would always be comfortable.
And even if you look back at one of your worst experiences in life, and they're gone years and years. Now, with a different viewpoint, you can even see, wow, that made me learn not to rely on others, but to rely on myself, or whatever lesson, So the worst things sometimes bring you the best progress. And that's so funny. And I asked the spirit world, why can't we learn and progress and grow in happiness and more easy, and without pain and hurting? And they said, well, sometimes you don't get the lesson if you don't feel the prick. And
Exactly.
and we created it like that because if it's everything fine, I was arguing with them a long time. They came with a very funny example. I love cheesecake and I love sweets. And they said, if you eat your beloved cheesecake every day for 3 months, then it's no more special. You won't like it because you're already over with the taste and you destroyed it. So keep it something special, maybe only once a week or so, and then you can really enjoy it and make this experience, a wonderful experience. And it's precious and special. And if there is no wonders in our life anymore, everything is known, I think we would lose even the motivation to move on or to do something because it's the curiosity of humanity. We want to know and we want to understand. Thank God. That's why we're questioning and moving on and moving on. If everything is perfect in paradise, you would sit down and do nothing, I think. And even that I got because they invited me to kind of the happy place and everything was wonderful, the heaven of the pets and the heaven of all the good souls. It was so wonderful, but after a while I thought, well, what are you going to do here? Everything is so wonderful, there's nothing to do. So I can even understand now this saying that maybe the souls created this for us to experience sometimes very hard and difficult life, because only paradise and everything fine, then you're not doing anything. So they wanted a challenge and they wanted some adventure. And we can see it more the adventurous or a positive way and not as the big catastrophe. It really depends how you view it. Is your glass of water half empty or is it half full? So there's still something to sip.
Exactly. I think that's such an important lesson. And the last thing I wanted to touch upon is your YouTube channel. So I found many interesting lessons on there. So I would encourage everybody to give you a follow, and we'll make sure to add all the links below. But tell me, how can people connect with you? How can they reach you if you want them to reach you? And why should they check out your YouTube channel?
Of course, everybody is free. I just invite you to have a look. And I got this nudge from my guides that I should go out and share some of my experiences. And by phrasing or wording them and describing the pictures, I'm kind of animating your own imaginary capabilities. So you're already coming in contact with some of your own psychic senses, because I don't mix in ready-made pictures taken from the internet to give a description of what I describe with words. And I like to share these experiences because they are kind of very symbolic sometimes, and everyone can learn something from that or get maybe some kind of a moment. And that's why I made these videos and put them in there, and they still nudge me. And they even told me, doesn't even matter what you are talking, because they are infusing kind of energy, what they do with many people on the internet. And it's about finding resonating energies that feel good for you and do you good. And maybe if you learn something by the side, okay, wonderful, even better. That's why I made this little YouTube channel with little videos about things I experienced or beings I encountered, and also some practical things. If you have some problems, you can use the EFT, that's tapping on the meridians. I have a little video about that, or some other exercises. So I try to be a little grocery store with different things. And if you feel drawn to it, please come and have a look. You can leave a comment. I react to the comments. And if it's more than just one question, or if the answer would fill up the whole comment section, and I already can see that this is more a theme for a session or a reading, then you can contact me. My email is, you can get it via the YouTube. You have to apply, I think, with this I'm no robot thing to choose some pictures. But my email is available, and you can write me an email and ask for a session or a reading if you want. Although I'm retired medium and I don't do that much work. I take clients from time to time, but I don't want to work, 9 to 5 only with clients. I'm old enough now to share and maybe help other people onto their own experiences. And who knows where it's going to and how long I'm still here. I mean, when I was younger, I always felt like, please get me out of here, like in IKEA, where you put your children into the playing ground, and then suddenly all the people in the whole building hear via microphone, little Jane wants to be picked up from the children's paradise. So little Gabrielle wanted to be picked up from Earth paradise. But now I'm thinking, well, it's getting really interesting, because we're all coming more and more into consciousness and asking different questions, and many more people are waking up and connecting the dots, and suddenly obvious truth just jump in their face. Like I love Star Trek, and I saw it, and when I watched it, I didn't wonder about the Wookiee Chewbacca. But after I had met Sasquatch and had contact with him in the astral, it was repeated in the TV, and I saw it, and it was so obvious to me, that's a Sasquatch. So a lot of hints are also kind of hidden in movies, in pictures, in legends. The information is everywhere. Only if you're blind, you don't see it. But if you start to ask and question and work a little bit with your inner self, then you suddenly see all the things, and the knowledge is coming towards you. Sometimes you're not even able to digest that fast as if how the knowledge is coming. It's everywhere. You don't need me or anyone else. Even a stone can be your teacher. Every flower, every bird can teach you. Just listen, become silent, and get big ears and feel what's there. What's it telling?